Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to another video game review. And today's review, we're going to be talking about Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. And the funny thing is, while I was slightly excited for this game, I wasn't as highly excited as I would have liked to have been, you know, with all the demos and stuff like that. I was like, I still want to play this, want to give it a shot and all that stuff. So what do I think about it? I dare not say. The thing is that when it comes down to it, I love Final Fantasy. And while I have not played everything in regards to Final Fantasy, I have played through the main series and stuff like that. Of course, with the exception of the MMOs, of course, but that's just not the point. The point is that I do enjoy the Final Fantasy games. Are they all perfect? Some, not so much, but there are some good ones out there. This one is one of those games that did some good, but the rest kind of fall through, sadly. Now, record, this is not completely Square Enix's fault. They did have the same people who did Nioh to help actually make this game. And, well, there's some evidence showing that this was definitely running on the Nioh engine. If you're not familiar, Nioh was Team Ninja's attempt in creating a Souls game. And I would say it worked out well at the time, you know. I enjoyed the first one, I enjoyed it well, but I have not played the second one. And I was like, okay, Team Ninja's working on a Final Fantasy game. This should be interesting. And then, lo and behold, everyone was talking about like as if it was a Souls-like game. And at that point I was like, that doesn't bode well. Because whenever I first saw trailers and previews for this game, my thought was that, oh, this is literally a reimagining of the first Final Fantasy game. This is perfect. This is actually what I wanted. A quote-unquote remake of Final Fantasy One. It is not that, sadly. It is not. In terms of how the story is, this is supposedly takes place before Final Fantasy One, which is confusing enough, if you get where I'm getting at. I'll try to explain it as much as I can without spoiling much, but essentially, this is literally happening before Final Fantasy One. Thus, the term Final Fantasy Origins. In terms of story, it it's weird. Because if you've watched the previews, they are not hesitant about who the main character is. They are not hesitant about it. That's for sure. And, I mean, I liked Jack. I liked Jack pretty well. I thought he was a really cool character. He kind of reminds me of Kratos in a way. So he is essentially the Kratos of the Final Fantasy series, especially considering the fact the way that he can take down the enemies and stuff like that. It's literally like that, and it's kind of satisfying. I do kind of like it. At first, I thought to myself, that whole finishing move thing seems like it would get old relatively quickly. But every once in a while, if I see it pop up, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty satisfying to see. It was pretty cool. I do like it. The other characters, though, I feel like while they are impactful, they're not as impactful as some of the other Final Fantasy characters we have had over the years. In fact, they kind of leave lackluster, would be the word, I suppose you could say. In terms of development, they're just there. And it's pretty obvious towards the end that they are just there. It's sad, but it's true. But with that being said, in terms of story, the first part of the story I was getting into pretty well. Then it gets to a point in the story where all of a sudden things start to unravel and reveal themselves. And I got very confused. Because I was like, what? What? Again, I don't want to spoil anything too much in case people actually do want to play this game. But the story was so confusing towards the end that I was just kind of like, well, I'm in it for the ride at this point. Might as well just blow right through it, you know? And while that may be the case, let's talk about the biggest thing that I think a lot of people are going to be asking me on, is the difficulty. Is it hard? If you play it on the standard, yes. The standard difficulty. You know, you have story, and then whatever the middle one was. Don't remember what is technically classified, but it's essentially standard, and then hard. I saw an article with the title said, those that are coming off Elden Ring, if they're jumping into Strangers of Paradise, play it on hard. I would not advise that. I would not advise that at all. I would not advise that. Not at all. For starters, the difficulty between Nioh and the difficulty between Soulsborne are two completely different difficulties entirely. While yes, they do function the same way, in terms of combat, it is drastically different. Some can argue and say that the Soul series is slightly slower in terms of having to block and then attack and stuff, and then depending on if you're playing on Bloodborne, where it's a little bit more aggressive. In Nioh's case, it's a lot more fast-paced, a lot is going on, and if you're not careful, you will die relatively quickly. And I do mean this, quickly. You don't actually level up in Final Fantasy Origins. Instead, you get armor pieces and stuff, and those armor pieces and weapons grow in terms of level, and thus, so does your stats. In terms of that area, it plays very much like Nioh, and if you played Nioh 1 at least, then you know what to expect coming from Final Fantasy Origins. It is literally a Nioh clone. In what I can describe probably in somewhat an average way, is not bad, but it's definitely not better than Nioh. And I'll get to why I say that, but in terms of the standpoint as to like going from mission to mission, collecting armor pieces and weapon pieces and stuff, and all that stuff, it's literally the same as though as if you were playing Nioh. And on the one hand, it can be good, but then in other cases, it's like, you know, this could have been better. This could have been better. And it's kind of sad to say that now, but it's true. It could be better. The combat could be better depending on how you look at it. The sad thing is, though, is that you have two forms of combat. You have the basic form of combat, and then you have the advanced form of combat. The advanced form of combat is a little bit too complicated for me to get a hold of, you know. You have the fact that depending on the timing as well as the pacings of combat, you can do advanced forms of techniques, but I could never pull them off. Nor could I even think about being able to use them in any form whatsoever, because of the fact that depending on how far you go into the game, you may very well be overwhelmed. You could be overrun. So, in other words, being able to pull off these special moves and stuff like that is harder to do because of the fact that you're going to get killed quicker than you could pulling off these special moves and stuff. This isn't a fighting game, this is a Souls game, essentially. From what it's supposed to be, of course. Then again, it's not really a Souls game, it's a Nioh game now. But then there's another form of combat that I do actually like, and that is the job setup. In the Final Fantasy franchise, you have different forms of jobs that you can select from. You know, they are like the warrior, the ninja, the samurai, the sorcerer. You know, whatever form of class you want to be, you can pretty much select those particular classes and stuff. And the way they did it in this game was pretty good. I'm not going to deny that. You do actually start off between 3 or 4 classes that you can change from. You can choose from either the purist, which is basically your fighting, your fist forms. You have the thief, which is the twin daggers. And then you have the great sword wielder, which is of course great sword, and then the caster, which is of course someone that can cast spells and stuff like that. While they are good, if you level them up, you actually evolve into the next form of other classes that you can attain. You know, Lancer, Dragoon, Berserker, Red Mage, White Mage, Black Mage, so on and so forth. So I mean, you get a lot of jobs to go on with this game. There's actually a total of 27, but I have yet to unlock all of them technically. And the way you do that is by leveling up your individual jobs that you get. If you fully max them out, you then enter into another tier list of other jobs that you can potentially use whenever you max out other jobs as well. So it's like combining certain jobs in order to make certain jobs and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. I do kind of like that setup. It's really good. But I've been kind of dodging the bullet mostly, and, well, the difficulty was a little bit much for me. Whenever I was playing it on standard, the difficulty was actually it was pretty difficult to get around and stuff like that. I died to Garland more times than I probably cared to admit, and I got to a point where I just got fed up with it, and I was like, you know what, let's just go into story. And here's the thing. Story is still relatively difficult, is relatively challenging still, but for those that can't seem to get through the normal stance and stuff like that, you can enjoy story mode pretty well. It's still difficult to a certain degree. Overall, in terms of the design and everything that is within Final Fantasy Origins, I like it, and then there are times that I want to like it, and then there are times where I'm just like, it's just not working out for me. I like the theming that they have. I like the theming of it. I love the job setup and everything like that. The combat can range from being good to sometimes feeling kind of boring almost in a way. And I know some people are going to say, well, that's because you had it in story mode, which is the easy difficulty. Here's the thing. It's still pretty challenging by itself on story mode. You will die occasionally from time to time. So it's not like, you know, dying every second or so, but you do die on occasion and stuff. So to me personally, I feel like it's a different form of difficulty, and I did enjoy the base game on its own. I just couldn't enjoy it the way that it was made, sadly. Doesn't help that technically when you beat the game, a new mode unlocks, which is Chaos Mode, and that unlocks a whole level of difficulty entirely. Here's the thing, you can go back on normal and hard with the current setup equipment that you get when you beat the game on the first mission and stuff, and it's relatively easy, not hard at all. Then you go into Chaos Mode with the first mission with your current equipment setup and stuff like that, and you can't do anything. You just can't. The enemies have way more HP than they should, they hit way harder, and it's almost impossible to get through. I didn't even get to Garland in Chaos Mode. So I thought to myself, I was like, do I feel like actually putting myself through this torment just to try to platinum this game? And at one point I said to myself, you know, this game isn't really worth platinuming in my opinion. I know some people will have a difference of opinion, and that's perfectly fine. But this game is just, it's too difficult for me. But that's not to say that no one else would enjoy it. I think there's going to be a fair few people that will enjoy it, but I'm afraid in terms of how this game is, it's not going to be for everyone. So if you're the type of person who don't like challenging games or hard games, this is not for you. If you played Final Fantasy and you love Final Fantasy, be cautious of this one, because I don't think you'll like it as much as what I tried to enjoy it myself. I enjoyed it to some degree, but not completely. If you are a fan of Nioh, you might like this. This is actually a pretty cool concept, and the job system does change things up in terms of what you're used to in terms of Nioh. If you are a Souls veteran or something like that, be very mindful of this, because again, it's completely different in terms of how difficulty it is from the Souls series to the Nioh form of gameplay. It's completely different. And those that have played both games would agree with me whenever I say the phrase that they're both completely different games. So, there you go. But in terms of rating, I would give Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins a 3 out of 5. Again, it's only based on its difficulty as well as its replay value. It's not as good and it's not as addictive as, like, say, Elden Ring, which by the time I got done beating the main story and playing through a little bit and stuff like that afterwards, I just thought to myself, you know, I just want to hop back into Elden Ring again just to enjoy myself, which I did. And that's not a good thing. When you can actually play a game that you just recently picked up and you just like, you know, I want to go back and play through the other one again. That's not a good sign. That's not a good thing. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this review. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin? Have you played any of it? Did you enjoy it? Or did you hate it? From what it sounds like, it's pretty much even. There's some people who do enjoy it, and then there's some people who didn't enjoy it. I can imagine how it can be, but yeah. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Catch you guys later.